You're listening to The Voice of Russia in Washington. I'm Kim Brown. In 1866, a group of ex-Confederate soldiers decided to form a fraternal organization. They called it the Ku Klux Klan, and this group's history is firmly entrenched in the fabric of America, especially in the post-Civil War era. Today, we're joined on the line with Frank Ancona. Frank is the Imperial Wizard, also known as the president, of the Traditionalist American Knights of the KKK. He joins us today from Missouri. Mr. Ancona, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. One thing I would like to correct right off the bat is the Klan was actually formed on December 24th, 1865.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
And if we could get into why the Ku Klux Klan was formed, who were some of the founders and what were they seeking to achieve?
Well, it was originally founded, it was right after the Civil War, of course, and there was six ex-Confederate soldiers that lived around the Pulaski, Tennessee area. They were some of them were captains in the Confederate Army, like there was a Major James Crow, Captain John Kennedy, and men like that. And they, the people after the Civil War were pretty down, depressed, and in those days they did a thing they called masquerading as kind of a way to pass the time to amuse themselves. So they wanted to come together and have a fraternity, sort of like the college fraternities, and so it was formed for that purpose. And of course, at the same time, down in the South, what was going on was the Union government at the time was sending their troops down there, basically kind of terrorizing the people of the South and putting the newly freed slaves in power positions, and they were kind of, and this is no slam on the black race, but at that time they were newly freed slaves. They really didn't have, it wasn't like they are now, being educated in the education system and everything like that. So things were definitely not being ran in a good fashion down there. And, they were being terrorized by these freed slaves, the carpetbaggers from the North and things like that. And they noticed that when they masqueraded through town, that the blacks in that day thought that they were seeing the spirits of the Confederate dead come back. So when they began to realize that the organization had some power like that, of course, people started joining the ranks, and it took on a more of a regulative type of force, because it was basically martial law down there in those days, but there was just a lot of lawlessness going on, and the Klan really succeeded in restoring law and order. It was disbanded, and so it ran from 1865 to 1877 in what we call the First Era, and it was disbanded in 1877 by Nathan Bedford Forrest. The first Grand Wizard was the term they used in those days, and he disbanded it because the Klan basically accomplished its mission.
And when we talk about these different eras of the Ku Klux Klan, and you're saying that the first era concluded in 1877, did I understand that correctly?
That's correct, yes.
In 1871, the Enforcement Act was passed by Congress, which at the time was also known as the Ku Klux Klan Force Act. And this was passed by Congress in an effort to stem the tide of terrorism, as you put it, by Klan members onto freed blacks and onto sympathetic whites. Can we talk about this era of Klan history, sir? How do you view this retrospectively?
Well, this is another part of history that has kind of been rewritten by people. The Klan, did not condone acts of violence against people. That, like I said, they used it to a certain degree to help control what was going on down there. But what happened is the government of the North again sent people in to form rogue organizations similar to the Ku Klux Klan. They would wear the regalia and everything like that, and they would go out and commit crimes and basically blame it on the Klan because that was how they wanted to try to destroy the Klan, because they did not want the Southerners to get their control back of their states in those times. The government that was in charge at that time did not want the Southerners to have a voice in their government. They were denying that the whites of the South were being disenfranchised of their right to vote. They were not allowed to vote during this time. So, the federal government instigated a lot of these things by sending these rogue agents down there to pretend to be Klansmen. And there's a really good book that talks about the true history of the Klan. It's called The Authentic History of the Ku Klux Klan, 1865 to 1877. It's written by Susan Lawrence Davis, who was a relative of some of the early members. This book was published back in 1924, I believe, and it gives a very accurate account of what happened, and it's in the words of the people who were members back then.
One of the acts that is traditionally associated with the Ku Klux Klan is that of lynching. It is difficult to estimate exactly how many people were lynched during the post-Civil War era, let's say up into the Civil Rights Movement. But some estimates say it's about 3,400, with about 1,200 of those actually being whites, the remainder of those being black. Is this a policy that the Ku Klux Klan consciously decided to pursue, or are you saying that some of these lynchings that have been blamed on the Klan were never committed by the Klan at all?
Right. A lot of those were not committed by the Klan. They were done by, rogue elements in the federal government at that time, the government of the North. But also there was mobs of white people that would, when they perceived a black person to commit a crime, they would go out on these lynching parties, and they were not necessarily Klansmen, though. They were just, basically it was mob violence going on there. But it wasn't necessarily the Klan, because if you look at what the principles of the organization were even back in that day, they didn't call for violence. It was a Christian organization. It was, to promote patriotism, but also to restore, law and order down in the South at that time.
And Frank, there have been documented cases of criminal convictions of Klan members for committing acts of domestic terrorism. We recently marked the 40th anniversary of the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, where 4 little girls were killed by a bomb. Mm-hmm. 4 Klan's members were indicted in this crime. 2 of them, actually, I believe, were able to be free for a period of over 20 years before charges were brought. These gentlemen were members of the Ku Klux Klan. So were they committing a rogue act absent or separate from what the national ambitions were, or were these just rogue agents?
I really believe that those members that did that, and I believe that that was a very heinous act. I don't care what color, race, children are children, and what those men did was a horrible thing. Whether they knew they were there or not, I don't know. But like I say, this was before my time. But I really seriously doubt the national leadership of the Klan at that time condoned that act. I would guess that they were acting outside of their their duties or orders as Klansmen.
And let's talk about what the Ku Klux Klan looks like now in the 21st century. What would you say, sir, are the ultimate goals of the modern-day KKK?
Well, for one, we do stand to, we want to preserve the United States Constitution as it was originally written. And we also want to preserve our history and our heritage as American citizens. We don't want it to be forgotten, and we want to keep traditional American values alive in America. Belief in God and family, taking care of our families, taking care of our communities, things like that. That's what we stand for. We want to restore, there's a lot of, we're against, this is what I don't understand. People that are against the Klan, what are they against? Are they against our stand against illegal drugs, or the illegal immigration problem, or are they against our stand against child molesters or homosexual lifestyles? Or do they have a problem with our protecting the United States Constitution and being patriotic citizens? I mean, it just seems like this negative stereotype because of the acts of a few rogue Klansmen. They want to paint the whole organization with a broad brush. They're stereotyping us. People don't like to be stereotyped, but that's what they've done with the Klan because of these acts again that you're talking about. were definitely horrible things, but that was not representative of all the members of the organization.
The image problem that the Ku Klux Klan has, as you stated, when we think about photos and documentation of Klan members and Klan activity, they're very damaging, I would say, when we see pictures of burning crosses, when we see images of persons who have been lynched and are hanging. And a lot of this is associated with the Ku Klux Klan. So as we said, Frank, when we talk about 21st century, in 2008, the United States saw the election of its first African-American president in Barack Obama. Have your membership numbers increased or decreased since the election of President Obama?
Well, they have definitely increased, but I don't believe that's because of the race of the president. I mean, they say he's the first black president. Well, I say he's really the first mixed race president. You know, he's neither black nor white. He's mixed. So that's kind of a falsehood. But yeah, our membership has definitely increased since his election. But you know, again, going back to this image thing, that's true. The media shows over and over those few actions, but they don't show the good things that the Klan did. They don't show it when the Klan was helping out the needy. When the Klan was helping build colleges, when we give out toys to underprivileged children, you don't hear about that kind of thing. When we pass out food and coats to the needy, so these things, you know, that's not exciting. So the media doesn't want to report on things like that.
Well, sir, when you talk about these charity acts that the Klan performs, are they inclusive of people of other races? And what are your feelings towards people of other races?
Well, yes, when we hand out food, clothing, coats, or any kind of benevolent action like that, it's not geared toward any certain race. So, you know, if we were at a public park, per se, handing out food baskets, and a black family comes up, they're going to get the same food basket that the white family is going to get. You know, we're not going to discriminate and say, well, these guys are black, we're not going to give them a food basket. We're not going to help them pay their electric bill. You know, that we will not discriminate in that way. And as far as other races, we do not hate other races. It's another lie that's been, you know, a distortion that's been made about the Klan. We do look out for the interest of our race, the white race, and we consider our race to be an extension of our family. So sure, we look out for our family first. To me, that's not hateful. That's just that just comes natural. You look out for, you know, you're going to look out for your children, your family first, and then if you can help another family out, you know, you would.
When we talk about these charity acts, as you mentioned, have there been families of color who have been the recipient of charitable acts done by the Ku Klux Klan?
There has been in the past. I mean, you can find those photographs if you know, you do a little research on the internet. You can find those, and you'll see where black families were helped, black churches were helped. The Klan helped build some black churches, and you can go to a site. I believe it's KKK Klan.com, and there's a lot of history on there, and they have old photographs of things like that. But even in this time, you know, of course, now in this day, things have kind of changed. There's a lot of organizations that are helping out, you know, the black race and other races, and there's not so many organizations out there looking out for the interest of the white race. So we work more in our own communities, and most of us, it's no secret that despite this integration that the federal government has tried to force on all the different races, people still kind of prefer to live amongst their own. I mean, for the most part, you have your white communities and your black communities. You have your Mexican areas of town. You have your Chinatowns in large cities. So people like to be around people of their own race. So I don't believe that's hateful to prefer to be around people who share your interest and values.
Back in September in Casper, Wyoming, there was somewhat of a historical meeting between John A. Barr, who is from the United Klans of America, and Jimmy Simmons, who is the president of the NAAC chapter in Wyoming. Not sure exactly what came out of this meeting, but is this the type of racial reconciliation dialogue that the Klan is interested in going forward? And what were your thoughts about this meeting?
Well, I believe that was a whole sham job to get publicity. That the United Klans of America, the real group, the United Klans of America, that's the one you're talking about that did this bombing. They were disbanded I believe back in 1987, I may be off on that year, but I think it's pretty close to that year, they were disbanded. But so this group now is being run by somebody who's trying to ride on the coattails of that. But I mean, we would no way sit down with the NAACP. We believe it's a communist front organization. It's not looking out for the interests of the black race. They want to keep blacks on the plantation. Basically, they want to keep them, dependent on the government. And the government's doing the same with everybody in America now. I mean, with this Affordable Health Care Act, they're wanting to put us all on the plantation.
Frank, recently a Democratic congressman from Florida, Alan Grayson, he compared the Tea Party to the KKK. What are your feelings about the Tea Party and the Republican Party in general? And do you feel any connection to the Tea Party ultra-conservative movement that has really taken a prominent place in our politics?
I really don't. I don't believe there's a political party in the United States that really represents us, period, anymore. I think they're all controlled by the same interests. It's kind of like if you take a quarter, you've got the side that's heads and the side that's tails. They look different, but it's just two sides of the same coin. And I believe that's what we've got. They're wanting us to think that we've got a government that represents us, but we truly don't. I mean, if a man like myself, just an average guy, a small business owner, goes, I wouldn't have a chance to run in a major race like that, because those major money interests are not going to support my campaign, because I'm not going to promote their interests. I'm probably going to go against a lot of their interests. So I really don't believe we have a political party that represents us anymore.
Frank, on the voice prompt for contacting your organization, you have info packets available. You also have applications for membership. What are some of the criteria that your group looks for before accepting new members?
Well, number one, we want people of sound mind. We want people of good moral characters, people who have a sense of honor and duty, people who want to help their country and help their neighborhood and make the world a better place for their fellow man.
Do you have to be white in order to join the Ku Klux Klan?
Yes, of course. I mean, the Klan is not an inclusive organization, and it's an exclusive organization. I mean, there's a lot of Jewish organizations I wouldn't be allowed to join because, I'm not Jewish. So, I mean, that's just kind of, again, this is an organization for our race. But it's not because we hate other people. It's just because this organization, black people are not going to join the Klan and have the interest of our race in mind when they join. So they're not really going to benefit us.
When you are accepting new applicants and the criteria is white, do you have to meet this individual in person in order to approve them? Or I'm just trying to figure out what is the whiteness litmus test necessarily? Is it just appearance only, or do you have to provide some sort of documentation of your lineage?
No, I mean, you can pretty much look at a person and tell what racial makeup they are. So, of course, we're not doing DNA tests. And, of course, I've heard that many times. Well, there's nobody with 100% this or that. And that's most likely true. There probably isn't. But, you have your people who descended of European descent, people of African descent. So it's the distinction in the races was not accidental. This was designed by God. He created all races. And that's the thing. If you look in Genesis at the creation story, God created each species and plant, everything like that. And after he created everything, he looked at it and saw that it was good. So if he says it's good, why do we want to, pervert that creation by intermingling?
And when you speak about diversification of the United States, many demographers and even the U.S. Census say that the United States will become a so-called majority-minority country by the year 2050, in which white people will be the racial minority. What are your feelings about that?
Well, if that happens, I think it's going to be the destruction of the United States because, the United States was founded by white Christian people who came over here from Europe. And these other races that are coming in, especially like these illegal immigrants coming from other countries, they're not assimilating into our country. They want to change us into the place they left, which is funny. They left there for a reason, but yet they want to come here and they want to enforce their beliefs and culture on the United States, like these Muslims. This is a Christian nation, despite what the president says. This nation is a Christian nation, and by allowing these foreign religions to come into our country, it's bringing the United States down, and it's destroying us.
Do you think there is a possibility for a race war in America?
I really don't believe there will be a race war. You hear that term a lot. I think it's going to be more of a religious war myself, between Christianity and other religions like Islam.
When we talk about the Ku Klux Klan, there is an association for violence. There are even places in the United States where Black and other people of color are afraid to travel because of the history of violence, particularly in places in the South. Do you think that racial equality is something to strive for, or should there be a dominant race that sets the tone or the policy for the others?
Well, I believe in order for the United States to remain as it was intended by its founders, this is where you get into what we call white supremacy, because we are, I make no bones about it, we are a white supremacist organization. But when you say the word white supremacist, again, that conjures up all these images of hate. But the way we look at white supremacy is, if the white race, we believe our race is superior. I mean, look at the advancements in technology, science, government, civilization. Most of the advances and comforts that we are living with nowadays were put in place by the white race. So the white race has been a light to the world. We've helped all the other races have benefited from the white race. And if the white race is a superior race in the United States, and we maintain supremacy, it's going to benefit every race. I believe if you look at the continent of Africa, they haven't really risen very far, in several centuries. So there's definitely a difference in the races.
Sir, there was a story in the news recently of a white supremacist group aiming to create a colony in North Dakota. Before I ask you if that is something that you agree with, how affiliated is the Ku Klux Klan, and I guess your chapter specifically, with other white supremacist groups such as the Aryan Nation, etc.?
Well, we are not affiliated with other groups like that, because a lot of them have their beliefs are completely contrary to what we stand for as American citizens. I mean, we stand for Americanism, so Nazism, socialism, those are things the Klan's against. And I mean, if you're a Nazi, you should be happy right now, because I believe National Socialism is the policy that's in place in this country right now. You've nationalized the healthcare system, the banking system, the automobile industry. So these National Socialists ought to be happy, because it's basically Adolf Hitler reincarnated right now. So again, they don't speak for us, and their beliefs are contrary to the Klan's. And when you were speaking about areas of the country that you said that blacks are afraid to travel in, well, there's a lot of areas in the country that whites cannot go into. I mean, I cannot go into, like, say, Gary, Indiana, and be safe, or I couldn't go to East St. Louis, Illinois, and walk around and be safe. I mean, so that goes for both sides there.
I'm sorry, Frank, I'm going to have to push back on you about that. And the reason why is because certain areas in the South have a demonstrated history of lynching blacks and harassing blacks. Please correct me, and I'd like to know this information if I don't know it, but have there been instances where whites have been targeted historically in areas, as you mentioned, Gary, Indiana, and East St. Louis are predominantly black areas. Have you found instances of whites being targeted, lynched and harassed, or murdered and harassed based off their skin color alone?
Oh, definitely. There's an epidemic of black on white crime going on in this country right now, and it's being ignored by the media. That you can go to different websites, like we have a site called freeamericanscommunity.com, and there's several stories of black on white crime going on. I mean, and I can't even probably count on both hands the stories that came out in the past couple of weeks. I was just looking at one this morning about a black boy who stabbed a woman who was jogging in the park. I mean, there was I think it was 3 black guys that attacked a World War II veteran and beat him to death. I mean, just this is going on all over the country, and it's being ignored by the media.
How organized is the Ku Klux Klan on a national level, or does it exist in many different chapters and segments?
Well, there's other groups out there using the name Ku Klux Klan, but for the most part, I wouldn't consider those groups Klan groups. Again, a lot of them are, those other groups are mixing with the Aryan nations and Nazi groups and things like that. But if you look at what the Klan truly stands for, you can't really be a Klansman and promote those type of ideologies. So as far as organization, the Traditionalist American Knights is very well organized across the country, and we work with other Klan groups that we see as being traditional Klan groups. There are some other good Klan organizations out there, but people who are interested in joining something like that, they really need to do their homework, because there's a lot of bad groups out there, and there's cons out there just trying to take people's money and things like that too.
Frank, does the Ku Klux Klan still advocate violence against non-whites and non-heterosexuals?
No, we do not advocate violence at all. We're a law-abiding organization, and our members take an oath and swear not to commit any crimes while they're a member of the Traditionalist American Knights. So we definitely don't condone violence. Now, of course, we do believe in self-defense, which is our right under the Constitution.
In the past, to your knowledge, has either your specific organization or an affiliated group of the Ku Klux Klan ever apologized on behalf of the lynchings that occurred in the post-Civil War movement up until through the Civil Rights Movement?
I really don't know, and I would not apologize, only because the Traditionalist American Knights of the Ku Klux Klan was never a part of anything like that. So I don't feel we have a reason to apologize. We're a different organization. This is the modern day Klan, and we're a fraternal organization. We're not the Klan of the past. We're a fraternal, patriotic society of national scope. We follow the laws in the country we live in.
And I appreciate you helping us to make that distinction, because it does seem a little confusing when we think about the Ku Klux Klan, and most people do have an understanding that there are smaller umbrella groups associated with the larger group of the Klan. So your group is able to disassociate itself from heinous acts committed by a different faction of the Klan. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. We recently did a documentary with the Discovery Channel. It was called KKK Beneath the Hood, and it really gives people a clear picture of what the modern-day Klan stands for and what we're doing right now. But I've come under fire by a lot of these illegitimate rogue groups out there, because I speak out against them. The ones, you can't lead a respectable organization and be a felon and a drug dealer and a gun runner. I mean, but there's groups out there with people in leadership positions like that, and I believe that they probably get good people involved who don't realize what's leading that organization. So then when I speak out against it, of course, I'm a horrible person, and I get a lot of nice threats, but that's okay, because I took an oath to uphold the honor of the organization as well, and I'm going to continue to do that.
So, Frank, out of curiosity, you said you're a small business owner, you're an American citizen. What is it like to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, of the Traditionalist American Knights of the KKK in the year 2013? Is that something that people know? Are you known in your community as being a part of this organization, and are you treated differently?
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely well known. You can kind of do a Google search of my name, and so I when I'm out in the community, of course, people know who I am, what I stand for. But people also know that we've brought about a clearer understanding of what the Klan's about. So people have accepted it, and people see that we're doing good too, and the negative stereotype is starting to dissipate a little bit. I live a normal life like any other American. I like to go out and eat a nice steak dinner with my family. We like to go on hiking trips. We like to hunt. Things anybody else likes to do. We go to church on Sundays. We support our local community.
Frank, when you hear the phrase white power, what does that mean to you?
Well, to me, that's a Nazi slogan. We get people who come to our organization from other groups, and I've heard that phrase, and I always tell them we don't use that slogan. We stand for God, race, and nation. White power just sounds a little childish to me.
And lastly, Frank, what are your hopes for the future of America?
Well, I hope that America will wake up and see the course that it's on by ignoring God and taking God out of our society, taking God out of our schools, taking God out of our government. I mean, I believe in separation of church and state, but that doesn't mean that you can't practice your Christian faith. And that seems to be where we're going in this nation, and it's going to be a very destructive thing if we don't wake people up and they don't turn back to Jesus Christ.
Frank Ancona is the president, also known as the Imperial Wizard of the Traditionalist American Knights of the KKK. He's been joining us today from Missouri. Frank, we certainly appreciate your candor and your time today. Thanks a lot.
I appreciate you giving me the time.
We sought to do a little fact-checking of our interview with Imperial Wizard Frank Ancona of the Traditionalist American Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, so we called one of the foremost experts on American extremism, Mark Potok of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Mark serves as the editor-in-chief of the SPLC's Intelligence Report, its Hate Watch blog, and its investigative reports. He previously spent 20 years as a journalist at major newspapers, including USA Today, the Dallas Times-Herald, and the Miami Herald. Mark, it's really a pleasure to have you on.
And it's a pleasure to be on. Thanks.
It's really our pleasure. Mark, we had an extended conversation with Imperial Wizard Ancona. One of the things that he presented was something of an alternate history, where he says that Americans really just don't understand the history of the KKK. If you can, we're going to run a clip real quick. And this is where he's saying exactly that. Americans don't understand the real history, and that really a lot of the violence that we've seen in the past was not KKK policy, if you will. Anyway, here he is.
Government of the North, again, sent people in to form rogue organizations similar to the Ku Klux Klan. They would wear the regalia and everything like that, and they would go out and commit crimes and basically blame it on the Klan because that was how they wanted to try to destroy the Klan.
He is saying that this wasn't really the KKK, and they were more of a peaceful group, but there was this kind of political attempt to paint them as worse than they were. Is there any evidence to that?
There is not a shred of truth to that. Ancona is either very stupid or very dishonest. In fact, the first Klan, what they call the First Era Klan, which arose in Reconstruction, was incredibly violent, engaged in things like the rape of white women who came down to help black freedmen in the South become literate. They were involved in castrations and hangings and floggings. It was very much the policy of the Klan to use violence. In fact, back then it was led by a single man, Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a Civil War general who had previously owned a very large slave yard in Memphis, Tennessee. Ultimately, Forrest disbanded that Klan, but only after the extreme violence that it perpetrated made possible the rolling back of the rights of the freedmen and the imposition of first black codes and then, of course, ultimately Jim Crow. And this goes on through the Klan's history. They absolutely were not rogue organizations during the Civil Rights Movement that engaged in such attacks as the murder of 4 little girls at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham back in the 60s. The Klan also was responsible for the infamous Mississippi burning murders of 3 civil rights workers in that state, in Mississippi, and any number of other murders. I mean, there was an incredible amount of violence perpetrated by the Klan in the 50s and 60s. And in fact, there's been some good scholarly work done which shows quite clearly that it was the violence of the Klan in that period that probably more than any other single factor led to things like the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, the real bellwether legislation of the civil rights movement. So, this is a bizarre kind of rewriting of history, which we see not only from Frank Ancona, but from other Klan leaders who seem bound and determined to paint the Klan as some kind of civil rights organization. I mean, these people are bizarre. They've adopted the language of the civil rights movement to say that's what the Klan really is. It's just proud of white people's heritage and history and so on, and hates no one, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely nothing could be further from the truth.
Mark, I tell you, first of all, I shouldn't have been surprised you knew exactly who that was. But secondly, I mean, you pretty much took care of the rest of the clips that we have. I do want to play this one on the Baptist bombing because he actually did address this, and it's something. It's kind of a similar statement, but let's hear from him for a second.
I really seriously doubt the national leadership of the Klan at that time condoned that act. I would guess that they were acting outside of their their duties or orders as Klansmen.
Now, you did talk about, for example, the sovereign group before, the sovereign nation group before. Sometimes you have ideology that inspires other people who are on the fringe to actually commit these acts. Was this a nationally directed action?
No, as Ancona knows well, during the 50s and 60s, during the civil rights movement, there was no national leadership of a national Klan. There were a number of different competing Klan groups around the country, just as there are now. And in fact, the leaders of the United Klans of America and the Mississippi White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, which were the 2 Klan groups responsible for most of the violence during the civil rights movement, absolutely did know about the violence and in many cases ordered it. So, Ancona has cooked up a fictitious national leadership of the Klan of the period, which never existed, and is denying what is well known to any student of the Klan, which is that these Klan groups and their leaders repeatedly planned and then carried out criminal violence. For instance, the leader, Sam Bowers, the Mississippi White Knights, ordered the firebombing of Vernon Dahmer's house. Dahmer was a man in Mississippi who was trying to register voters for the civil rights movement. And in fact, Vernon Dahmer was murdered. He died in the flames. There are many other cases that are similar to that. So, this idea that these were somehow rogue elements that have brought infamy on the Klan is a joke.
Mark, I just want to play one more clip because there does seem to be an effort by the KKK right now to rebrand, if you will. And in fact, Frank Ancona actually said, it's like, no, we don't hate black people or other races. And here he is actually saying that really what the KKK is effectively about is protecting their own family.
We do not hate other races. It's another lie that's been, a distortion that's been made about the Klan. We do look out for the interest of our race, the white race, and we consider our race to be an extension of our family. So sure, we look out for our family first. To me, that's not hateful. That's just that just comes natural. You look out for, you're going to look out for your children, your family first, and then if you can help another family out, you would.
Mark, first of all, let me ask even on the face of that. Yeah, on the face of it, is that not racist or extremist in some way?
Sure. I mean, look, when Ancona is talking about protecting our own families, his words are a direct echo of the first era Klan in the 1870s, which went on and on and on about how white women were going to be attacked and sexually assaulted by, ravenous black beasts who would take care, do these terrible things to them and so on. And that led the Klan directly into some of the things I've mentioned, castrations of black men, unbelievable tarrings and featherings and, whippings and floggings that left people dead or half dead. So that's what it really that's how it plays out. Protecting your family, that is white women, has typically meant for the Klan incredible violence. At the end of the day, the Ku Klux Klan is America's most significant and by far longest-lasting terrorist organization. That's what the Klan has historically engaged in, terrorism. And by terrorism, I mean, you murder one black man who has in some way crossed some sort of social boundary or who you suspect of crossing a social boundary, and it is not merely extrajudicial execution or murder. It's terrorism in the sense that it is a message of terror to all other black men. This is what will happen to you if you mess with our women or if you cross some other boundary that we don't approve of, up to and including not stepping off the sidewalk when a white man walks by.
Mark, one of the very interesting things that happened very recently, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, was Congressman Alan Grayson's comments. Now, we've talked about extremism, political extremism, and I do think by definition, the Tea Party would fall in there, at least large swaths of it. Now, obviously, like I said in the very beginning, first thing that a lot of people think of when they think of extremism in this country is the KKK. Well, Alan Grayson actually made a comment in a fundraising email in which he compared the two, or he related the two, rather. Do you think that was unfair?
I'm sorry, he related the Tea Parties and the Klan?
That's right.
Well, I don't think the Tea Parties are analogous to the Klan. The Tea Parties are without question a far-right formation, but they're much more inspired by the kind of libertarianism, the sort of radical libertarianism that we've discussed earlier. In other words, the Tea Parties believe in almost a kind of right-wing anarchist version of the world. The government shouldn't tax us, should be entirely out of our hair, ought to be an absolutely minimal kind of superstructure. So, when you look at the Tea Parties, I think there's no doubt that there are rich veins of racism and other kinds of extremism, and even a bit of anti-Semitism from time to time within the Tea Parties. And there are certain Tea Party groups, like Tea Party Nation, that I think you can describe pretty much unreservedly as racist. But, we've not named Tea Parties hate groups in our annual listings of hate groups because it's pretty clear in the vast majority of cases that you really can't ascribe that kind of ideology, white supremacy, to the leadership and kind of the fundamental ideas of the groups. Although, again, there's no question that there are some of those ideas among many individuals involved in the Tea Party movement.
All right. Once again, we've been talking with Mark Potok. He is one of the country's leading experts on the world of extremism, and he works at the Southern Poverty Law Center, where he serves as the editor-in-chief of the SPLC's award-winning intelligence report, its Hate Watch blog, and its investigative reports. Mark, that was really fascinating. Thank you so much for all the time.
A pleasure.